In this video, I want to talk a little bit about Remnant from the Ashes' new DLC that launches today called Subject 2923, and I just want to talk a bit about whether it's worth it, whether you should consider getting it, and what it adds to the game. So let's talk about the new biome being added. It's called Remnant. It's a new world. It's a snowy region, so you're going to be fighting in the snow, and everything's covered in snow, and there's snowy creatures and snowy enemies. So this is the new biome you're going to get, and it's about the same size as previous biomes are, so you can expect that. Additionally, a couple more places have been added to the Earth biome, so you'll be able to go there and see a couple of other places. Ward Prime and Royal Earth are the two locations, so there is a little bit of added content to previous Earth. There are 6 new bosses added to the recent world. I think you'll do about 4 or 5 in one run through, so there's probably only about 1 variant or 2 variants. I can't remember quite exactly how many when I played through I fought, but I think I fought 5 bosses. So I think you're going to get somewhere between 4 or 5 bosses when you run through. That means there probably isn't quite as much replayability in this biome as other ones, but it's still going to have, alternate events and alternate bosses as well. There are new weapons being added to the game. There are 8 new weapons, if I'm not mistaken, as well as 2 armor sets. And this is on top of the amount of rings and amulets that have been added. Some of these have already been added with the previous patch, the ones that were added to the previous zones, but there's going to be a lot more in the new zones as well. There are also more traits coming, even though some have already been added to the game. There are ones that you will get in the new DLC area as well, and there are new mods as well. My run through of the DLC took me about 8 hours or so. I was on a pretty undergeared tune, and I was a little bit rusty at the game. So I think this is probably going to be around 5 hours for most people. And again, this is just one run through, so I didn't see all the events or all the bosses. So I imagine it's probably going to take you around 10 hours or so to see everything. So that's what you're looking at roughly for this DLC. One thing I want to call particular attention to is the boss design in this DLC is so much better than what I've seen throughout the rest of Remnant. One of my biggest complaints at the launch of Remnant was that most bosses were just a boss with a bunch of infinite spawning adds. That was the vast majority of bosses in Remnant for the Ashes. They've since rectified this in the DLC. I think they understood that people wanted to see some other variety. And most bosses are a single character or maybe 2 characters, and they're just a different fight than what you're used to in the Remnant of Ashes game. I genuinely enjoyed the first areas of the DLC. This is Ward Prime and Earth. But the snowy area kind of reminded me a lot of what most of Remnant is, which is a lot of copy pasta. You start to see it rather quickly once you get into the snow region that everything is kind of copy-placed and nothing really feels handcrafted, which is, again, one of my biggest complaints about Remnant of Ashes itself. I'm really hoping if they make a Remnant of Ashes 2, that they work more on handcrafting these areas rather than relying on procedurally generated things. That said, this whole DLC costs $9.99 USD. You're talking about 10 hours of gameplay or so if you do everything, maybe more to get every item if you're someone who really wants to get every item. So I absolutely think that's worth the price. I mean, that's very, very cheap for a DLC. So if you like Remnant of the Ashes and you're a big fan of what the game has done, you're going to get a lot more of the same. So that's a good news if you like Remnant of the Ashes. And if you weren't a fan of the bosses or the way the bosses were handled, this is improved. I think it's probably, if you haven't played Remnant for a while and this is one of your biggest gripes, I would consider checking out this DLC. I think the boss design is a lot better and you might have a lot more fun with it. And also because of these new items and traits and mods that you can only get in the DLC for some of them, it's going to open up a lot of new builds. If you're a build person or a big fan of making builds, you're going to be able to build new builds during this DLC because of it. A lot of them are elemental based, so if you haven't made anything elemental based or are curious how it might work, you might want to check out this DLC. I haven't personally done builds for Remnant because I didn't think there was enough variety, but I'm actually going to be doing a couple builds because I had so much fun with this DLC and because I just thought of them while I was playing because of the possibilities, and they've added a lot of things to the game. So you're going to be seeing some builds from us on the website and on YouTube. I don't know exactly how many. I'm going to be getting into Wasteland 3 here pretty soon. But if you like build content on this channel, stay tuned for at least a few builds on Remnant of the Ashes. So in conclusion, if you're a fan of Remnant from the Ashes, I think Subject 2923 is a no-brainer for DLC-wise. It should bring you back to the game, give you new play styles, new things to do. $9.99 is not a lot of money, and we've seen some really terrible DLCs recently, Code Vein. So I think for what you can compare DLCs to, this is a very, very good DLC, and it's super cheap. So if you like Remnant, you should definitely consider going to pick this up.